Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and hi if you're new here, I'm Jade, and today we're going to do my April wrap up. So I love doing my wrap up videos because I kind of like to reflect on what I've read for the month, and I love watching these because I love getting people sort of like recommendations and seeing what they've read, partly being nosy, but it's fine. So let me share what I have read in the month of April and what I thought of it. Oh, by the way, you might spot something new in the background if you've watched any of my past videos. And yes, I am getting bookshelves. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to finish building it because there is some hardware missing. So I'm waiting for the manufacturer to ship it over. But then once, I can actually finish building, we can do a like organize and decorate my bookshelves kind of video probably. I don't really know what to do with them. I don't feel I'm very good at that kind of thing. I've never really had nice bookshelves. So if you have any tips or places I can find inspiration, please do comment them below. But anyway, let me get on with what I read. So the first book I picked up in April was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. It was actually picked in my TBR video. If you saw that, my creation of my TBR jar and picking my first picks, and it was chosen for being the book longest on my TBR. Now, I know this is a super popular book, and obviously it was made into a movie. I saw the movie when it first came out, like years ago, and I wasn't the hugest fan, but I did end up picking up the book thinking, oh, I should read it. It's really popular. But I never got round to it, I think because I didn't really like the movie, but I kind of couldn't remember the movie anymore. So it kind of felt like the perfect time to pick it back up anyway, because I barely remembered the movie. So I gave it 3.5 stars because I did genuinely enjoy reading it. I wasn't bored, but I just don't like the characters in this book, to be honest. So, in case you haven't read it or seen the movie or know anything about this book, essentially it is about a woman called Amy who goes missing, and like we kind of learn that she likes to play a lot of games with people, I guess you could say. And then her husband Nick is looking for her, but then maybe all isn't what it seems with him. And then it obviously plays out with this whole story of trying to find her. We get like excerpts of her old diary. It's mainly from his perspective. For a lot of the book, there's a bit of a change with that. And as I said, we read her diary. I don't want to give too much away, but essentially it is sort of like a mystery kind of novel, I would say, mystery thriller, more of a mystery, in my opinion. But as I was saying, I just don't like the characters. They are both really toxic. They are in such a toxic relationship. And then to me, the ending is just awful. It's kind of like you start off at square one with a couple that are clearly in a bit of a toxic relationship. And then by the time, yeah, you get to the end, not a lot changes. There's a bit of a twist in it, but like, I just feel like the characters never really grow or develop. I just don't like them. So that's why I have to rate it lower, because afterwards I'm just left feeling like, oh, right, okay. Like, I don't feel like invested in any of them, but it's not a boring story to read. So that's why I've given it 3.5. So like, yes, I enjoyed reading it. It's just, I don't know. I just don't vibe with them, okay? I have to say though, I do really like the way it's written, which is another reason it's got the 3.5, because as I said, I wasn't bored and I do really like the way it's written. I just have to take that off because as I don't love the characters, it's just not really a book I feel like really passionate about when I finish it. So the second book I picked up in April was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jiminez. I actually went and bought this when it came out because my online book club that I often follow were doing the book and I thought I would join in. As I read Abby Jimenez's Part of Your World earlier this year and I loved it. I can't remember what wrap up that was in, maybe February? I think. I'm pretty sure I read it Valentine's week. And I really enjoyed that. So I was like, I should read another Abby Jimenez book. I do have a couple on my TBR, but as the club were doing this one, I picked it up. So I rated it 4 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as Part of Your World. I think because there was just a bit more of the premise of this story that was a little bit unbelievable. Like, you really have to obviously suspend your disbelief to kind of follow this story. So what it is about is there is a hot veterinarian. I mean, what more could you want, right? Um, and he ends up asking out one of his clients, and she says yes, and they go on this date and they get on really well, and then she reveals actually she's moving to a completely different state literally the next morning. And that's where I find it just a little bit unbelievable, because of the fact that, like, why would you agree to go on a date if you knew you were moving the next day? I just find that a little bit weird. So then obviously after that, a long distance relationship ensues. It turns out she's moving home because her grandmother has dementia and she wants to help out, which, you know, totally a good reason for her to be moving back home to her home state. But it was just a bit weird that she entered like kind of this relationship thing before she left. And obviously with the distance, there's a lot of complications, and they feel like they should call it off a lot. And there's lots of other things in the book. There is quite a lot about family dynamics in the book, and you know, especially with the grandmother that has dementia. And I do really like that aspect. Like, it wasn't just a pure solid romance. There was definitely some about sort of family dynamics and drama, and also just like the clever way that the theme of sort of memories and remembering is intertwined through the whole novel is really clever. So I think Abby Jimenez's writing here is pretty great, except from the regular Rhysand references. If you've read it, you probably know what I mean, but basically, the main character is likened to Rhysand a lot, and by multiple characters, like at least two, I think maybe three. I think it's mentioned 3 times. And I'm just like, this is too much. Like, I kind of liked it the first time. I was like, it's cheesy, but I like that it's like referenced another literary writer, you know, that we've got another book reference. I think that's cute. I think it's like, you know, it's a little bit free advertising, even though I'm sure a lot of people have read ACOTAR, but the amount it was done was just overdone, and it just got, yeah, it got too cheesy for me. So sorry, Abby Jimenez. Generally, I love your writing, but that was too much. And there is a little bit of spice in this book, by the way, for anyone who doesn't like it, but it's not like in your face. It's not loads. It's just a little bit. But yeah, so I gave it 4 stars because I thought it was cute. I thought it was a very nice story. I liked having the family dynamic. It's just that the relationship felt a little bit forced and unlikely at the beginning, if you know what I mean, just for the fact that you would even agree to go to a date when you're moving, you know, especially moving the next morning. Like, do you really have time to go on a date the night before when you're completely moving? I don't know. But yeah, I still enjoyed it. So next, I continued with the Throne of Glass series, and I read Heir of Fire. I must say, like, the way this one started off, I was really enjoying it, but maybe not like as much as the others. But then the end came in. Like, I think once I hit part 2, I started just getting like completely engrossed in this story, and the ending was wild and crazy, and I loved it. So I decided to give it 5 stars. Obviously, it's hard to talk about a series when I'm doing a wrap up video, because I don't want to give things away if people haven't started the series and they want to read it. But you know, essentially it is a fantasy series by Sarah J. Maas, and in this book we get to meet some new characters. I have seen a few spoilers about these characters around, unfortunately, so I kind of knew what was/is coming a little bit. But yeah, we essentially get to meet a few new characters in this book, and it just sort of starts changing the dynamic of things. What I will say is I didn't really feel the romance in this one. That's one reason why I was debating whether I should give it a 5 star, but the ending for me was just so good that I decided to, because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'm like, if a book leaves something that I keep thinking about, then maybe it's worthy of that 5 star. And I was not bored at all throughout the book. It's just, yeah, I didn't really feel the romance. And also, one of the new characters we met, I found the chapters from their perspective a little bit dull at first, I guess you could say. I think because I didn't know them, but I ended up quite liking it in the end. If you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm sorry, but obviously I don't want to spoil anything in the series for you if you're planning on reading it. So after reading Heir of Fire, I was still quite in a like fantasy style mood, so I decided to pick up The Spellshop by Sarah Beth Durst. So this is another one that was picked in my TBR jar video, and it was for an illustrated cover. I do think the picture is so cute. I love it. I think it's really pretty. It's just such a magical little cottage picture, and I love it. You know, I saw this described as a cottagecore romance fantasy, and I think that is completely accurate. Also, in the author's acknowledgement parts at the end, she said she wanted to write a book that felt like a warm hug. And I feel like she did that so well. So I decided to give it 4.5 star, because for me, I don't feel like I'm going to overly think about this book forever or anything like that. So I didn't really feel like maybe it was worthy of the 5 star, but it was such a cute read. So I gave it 4.5 because I really enjoyed it. It's quite unique compared to a lot of things I've read personally. And yeah, I just thought it was a super nice book. It just kind of made me smile in the end. So essentially what it's about is there is our main character, Keela, I think is how you say her name. Keela is a librarian and she returns to the island that she grew up on. Her parents moved from there with her to like the main city when she was very young. And she decides to return because there is a fire where she is, and she escapes with her kind of like little sidekick called Kaz, who is such an adorable character. I love Kaz as a character. Who's actually a plant, like he's a talking plant, and they move back to her old cottage and have to sort of renovate and everything. And it sort of turns out a lot of the neighbors decide to help, and they generally are all really sweet. I mean, obviously you get your odd bad character to add dynamic, but generally the neighbors are really helpful and it's really sweet. And then she kind of introduces magic to revive the island because we kind of find out a lot of it's dying, and she stole some magic books from the library, and then some drama happens from that. Which obviously I don't want to spoil the whole entire plot, but that's just like the premise of it. And it's basically about a community coming together, which is why I think it's just so cute, and that's why it achieves that hug that the writer was trying to do, that warm hug. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. And the only thing I struggled with was picturing the characters, because we are told that our female main character, Keela, is blue. But sometimes they're referred to as humans, but then I know some have antlers. So I was kind of just struggling to picture exactly how the characters were and looked against each other, but it's just such a cute magical thing, and also you just have to use your imagination. Then we stuck with the fantasy and went for Fearless, which is the third part of the Powerless trilogy by Lauren Roberts. There is a novella in the middle, in case you were thinking, oh, it's book 4, but this is the third main book of the trilogy. I actually pre-ordered this from Barnes & Noble. It was a bit late, so I started reading it a bit later, and I kept seeing everyone like, I need to talk about this book, and I was like, oh my god, why? I feel left out. But unfortunately, Barnes & Noble just seemed really slow. I ordered from them because I'd heard, terrible things about Amazon, and I had an issue with Amazon for Onyx Storm. But actually, Barnes & Noble have been a lot worse. I ended up returning my Sunrise on the Reaping book because it came like 7 or 8 days after, I think it was 8 days after release is when I got it from them. So I'd gone out and bought it in the meantime so that I wasn't completely left behind. But yeah, I wasn't as bothered about having this one on time, but I do really like the series, and this book was a bit of a wild ride, I'm not gonna lie. So I decided to rate it 4 stars, which is the lowest I have given a book in this series, I think. Ultimately, I love Kai and Pei, the FMC and MMC, but I wasn't bored at all reading this. I was addicted. I loved reading it. I read it really quickly. But my issue with it is I just don't think the story went exactly where I would have liked it to. Of course, again, it's hard to talk about something which is further in a series, so I don't give spoilers. But ultimately, there is a lot of foreshadowing in this book, and I could see a lot of what was coming. But then what I thought was coming, which I wasn't like fully wanting to happen anyway, was twisted to an even darker place. And I don't know, there was just, I really did enjoy it, hence 4 stars, but I can't give it 5 because I just feel like a lot of the choices made in the books felt a bit inauthentic to a lot of the characters' personalities that we knew. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to spoil it anymore. And if you like this book and want to discuss the ending with me, because that'd be really cool, yeah, reach out on my social media, message me, because I'd love to discuss it with someone. Then the next book I read was Playground by Richard Powers. If you watched my Reading Out of My Comfort Zone video, it is about this book, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. If you've watched that video, you'll know I didn't really like it, sadly. As you can probably see, I've given it 2 stars. Ultimately, I'm awarding the 2 stars because he's definitely a brilliant writer. Like, the writing in it, there are some beautiful sentences and moments in this book. But for me, just like the way it was set out, with us constantly jumping timeline and constantly jumping perspective. Like at the beginning, we're often getting like literally like a page or 2 of each character's perspective, and then it jumps to another. And I just felt like as a result, I couldn't connect to the characters, so I just didn't really care what was happening in the story, honestly. I did quite like the relationship between 2 of the characters called Todd and Raffi, but I felt like because we were still jumping around, I didn't care about them enough. And I just felt like I couldn't connect to it as a result. So yeah, if you want to know more about that one, you can watch my other vlog. I think some people might end up loving this, but I think I often judge how much I like a book or get invested in a book based on how much I connect and love the characters. And I just feel this one didn't give me that opportunity. So my online book club actually picked this as the May pick, but it came out in April and I got it and read it when it came out just because I knew people would be talking about it. So this is actually my first Emily Henry book. So I started with her new one, Great Big Beautiful Life. And since this, I have read that this isn't quite her standard romance, that this is actually quite different to a lot of the other ones. Now, I have a couple of her other books. No, I have one of her other books on my TBR cart right now. I have Book Lovers, which I do really want to read. And I know a lot of people have mentioned other books of hers to me. So I definitely want to read some more Emily Henry just to compare. But I actually really enjoyed this one. I rated it 4.75. The only reason I took off a little bit was I felt like by the end I had a couple of questions that I kind of wanted answered in the book that I didn't get, but I still really enjoyed this. So ultimately it is about two writers called Alice and Hayden, and they are both sort of in competition with each other to win the chance to write an autobiography for a famous woman called Margaret Ives. Margaret's actually been out of the spotlight for a while, so she's a bit elusive, which is why this is such a big opportunity. Hayden has written quite a few like big autobiographies before, and for Alice it's like quite a new thing. She works with the magazine and she just is really interested and really wants to do it. So obviously this is about getting into the depths of someone's life and interviewing them. So I will say this has to be inspired by The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It had those kind of vibes, but it also has this romance story sort of intertwined. So as you can probably guess, the romance is to do with Alice and Hayden, the two competing writers. But there's like complications because they have signed NDAs, so they can't really talk about their work too much with each other or what's said. So it makes things a little bit awkward and it makes them a bit wary of like falling for each other. And that's kind of what the story is about, is who's going to win to get the autobiography, and also how does their relationship work, okay? And like, do they get on? Are they completely competitive? Like, there's different dynamics that I don't want to give away. And then there's a complete twist at the end. Yeah, so there's a little bit going on, but definitely inspired by The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So if you like that, I think you'll like this book. So yeah, not as purely romance as I've heard Emily Henry's other books are, but as I said, I really enjoyed it, so I gave it 4.75, and I'll have to see how it compares to other Emily Henry when I get around to reading them. Then the 8th book I read was Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. I bought this a long time ago back in the UK and brought it over with me, which is why the cover is very different compared to a lot of the ones that I see circulating in the US. I really like the US covers actually, and obviously the rest of my series isn't going to match, but it's fine. So if you can't tell by the 5-star that I have rated this, I loved this book. Now I can see why some people don't like it. I've seen a few mixed reviews. It definitely is a very huge mishmash of genres, but it's like my idea of perfection, how it's mixed. So yeah, essentially it's set in like the Regency era, but it also has like the romance and it has a lot of mystery to it. So it's definitely a bit of a mix of genres. But as I said, for me, like the perfect mix. I loved having that mix. So what it's about is we have our female main character who is called Signa, and she seems to be kind of like immune to death. And we sort of find out that she can actually talk to death. In this like sort of interesting twist. So that's where all like the fantasy element comes in, and she's living with her aunt, and her aunt passes away. A lot of people around her just seem to die, which is why she has this kind of like fear of this death that she can talk to, who's like obviously personified in this. Once her aunt Magda dies, she then gets taken in by some living relatives and she goes to live with them, and then it's like total Secret Garden vibes. I say that because the main lady of the house has passed away, and she actually had this like private garden of hers in their grounds. They live in a massive house. And then her daughter is sick now. So basically the lady of the house has died. The father has gone a little bit mad as a result. The daughter is now very sick and probably dying. And it's all a bit of like a mystery of what happened, and Signa kind of starts figuring it all out and trying to save her cousin. So yeah, and as I said, a secret garden is kind of part of this, or like a private garden. I wouldn't call it secret so much, but yeah. So as you can see, like slight Secret Garden vibes there. If you've read that or seen the movie or know the story of that. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to give things away. There is a little bit of controversy around the plot, and I do get it, but I think people need to remember that it's set in the Regency era when times were different, and at the end of the day, it's a fantasy, and you just suspend your disbelief, you know. But that's what I'm going to say on the matter, because if I tell you what controversy is, I'm going to give away a bit of the plot, which I don't want to do. But I just had to throw that in there. That for me, I don't find it so much of an issue because of the time it's set in. Okay. But yeah, as you can tell, love the book. And if you like your Regency stuff, but you also like a bit of mystery and romance, definitely give it a go. Okay, and the final book I read this month is just a short story, which is The Housemaid's Wedding. I wanted to continue with the series because then I've only got one more book to read. So this is just the novella, like the short story in the middle. I know this was released last, but I read online that you should probably read it between 2 and 3 because I think it like bridges the gap because apparently book 3 like is set further in the future to book 2, so this kind of bridges the gap a little bit. As you can probably see, I wasn't a huge fan of this. I gave it 2.5 stars because it wasn't boring. It's a really short, easy read. I do like Frieda McFadden's writing style. Like, it's easy and accessible, but to me, the plot was just severely lacking. Ultimately, this is obviously a thriller series, so I was expecting a very good, like, little thriller short story. I read The Gift by Frieda McFadden, which is one of her short thrillers at Christmas, and I thought that was really clever for like a short story. I really enjoyed it just because I think for something short, she just did it so well. But this just no. It starts off with like a little bit of tension, and basically our main character Millie is getting married in this. I would say that's a bit of a spoiler, maybe to the first book if you're reading the series, but I mean the title kind of gives that away. So she's obviously getting married, and she gets these like threatening phone calls, and I'm like, oh, something big's gonna happen, and then it just doesn't really. I honestly felt the novella was more about the fact of her trying to get a wedding dress and sorting that out, and just family dynamics. Like it was just not really a thriller in my opinion, or what I was expecting. So yeah, like it was cute. I like the main characters in the Housemaid series, so it was cute reading a little bit more about their stories. But I just felt like honestly, Freedom McFadden could have done so much better here. I'm sorry. And that is everything I read in April. You will have seen on my latest TBR jar video a few of the ones that I'm going to be reading in May. So yeah, please keep up and watch. Please subscribe if you haven't already and you enjoy just discussing anything books. And yeah, I will see you again real soon. Bye!